90% of AI adoptions fail. They are happening due to technology, not due to realizing business value and benefit. We are trying to focus on those areas that are the most demanding from overall market perspective. Now it's data and AI, of course. Most of our focus is on those areas because that's what clients need. They want to understand their data. They want to turn it into their competitive advantage. They want to get some additional efficiency with AI.
Welcome to Impact with Digital. Today we have our first guest, and I'm excited to introduce Andrey from 8Allocate. Andrey, welcome to our first guest interview. Looking forward to having a chat with you, and I know you've got a very interesting background, so let's get into it.
Thank you very much, Jay. Thanks for inviting me, and I think it will be a great conversation.
So maybe before we start out, if you just want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a couple of words about myself. So my name is Andrey Kaluzhny. I'm CEO at the technology company called 8Allocate. We are based in Eastern Europe, primarily Ukraine, Poland, Romania. So this set of countries. I am based in Ukraine by myself, traveling a lot, basically living between a couple of countries where like my clients are and my teams are here. I'm in this space for about 20 years, starting from being software developer in very large corporations, banks, financial institutions, retailers, then building my career throughout the management, and then decided to move to entrepreneurship after some stage of my life.
Ah, fantastic. So I'm intrigued that you're based in Ukraine. Obviously, we're recording this in March 2025 when there's a lot going on around Ukraine and the US and things like that. But let's put politics aside. What is life like as a business owner in Ukraine these days?
That's a very good question. It is very different from those areas that are actively under war, which is about 20% of the territory based on the east and south of Ukraine. If you come to Kyiv, for example, where I'm recording the session from today, you will not see any difference from London or any European city. So cafes, restaurants, transport, everything works. In fact, it's very sunny day today, very beautiful weather. So yeah, of course, there is a lot of limitations that are caused by the war, which we need to live with. But overall, people are managed to find out how to organize their life. So now it's more like common than it was in 2022, for example. So in my opinion, the situation improves. Also, it's funny, but from business perspective, any turbulence, including war, it damages some businesses, but it also opens the opportunities for another. For example, if you're talking about Ukraine, so of course, everything that is related to like physical production, like agriculture, heavy metals, like machinery, those industries are not in the great shape because they depend on the physical plants and factories that might be destroyed. Also, it's harder to import and export physical goods for different reasons. But if you're talking about creative industries and software development in particular, it opened some new opportunities for local companies here associated with very high quality engineers and talent pool, which now is like at the best, absolutely like best cost across Europe, and great scalability as well. So it's almost 3,100 IT specialists. Many of them are in the country available to work. It's possible to scale teams quickly, and the cost will be lower than any other place like Poland, Romania, Hungary. So yeah, that's in short how it works now in Ukraine from both personal life and business perspective.
It's interesting. Obviously, we see things on the media and they always show the worst side of Ukraine. You give us a totally different insight from within that.
I think that problem with media is that they are making money on negative. They are not making money on positive news because positive news, they are a bit more boring.
On that positive news then, someone told me that if you've got the most complex IT problem in the world, the best place to go is Ukraine. And that surprised me. I wasn't aware of that. I guess every country is struggling to develop their IT skills fast enough to keep up with the pace of technological innovation. But it sounds like Ukraine has got that balance in terms of you've got bright people that learn very quickly and are able to respond to the changing trends. What's the magic formula?
Yeah, thank you. That's very good observation. Honestly, I wouldn't score us as the best. So maybe we are under like top 5 or top 10.
Well, top 5 is still not bad.
But in some areas, we are indeed better than other companies. So we have certain specifics. So first of all is the overall level of technical competency, which comes from the education. And it's very common for all post-Soviet Union countries because USSR was very much engineering focused. And everything that was related to mathematics, physics, and other technologies, it was very prestigious. So a lot of people, they want to be engineers, they have good mathematical background, they study in universities, and it's pretty inexpensive to study in Ukrainian university to US or probably not UK, but if you are not UK citizen, it will be expensive. That's why like more people here, they can afford it. The second is Ukrainian culture, which is very unique due to the situation we have in the country. So we are still not part of European Union. We are still young and growing economy and democracy. That's why people here, they tend to work hard. They tend to measure everything based on their success. They tend to build their career. So basically, if you are talking about work-life balance, so their preference is very often shifted toward work versus life. How does it apply to like day-to-day work? So for example, you might decide to run important release on Friday and 6 p.m. you identify that nothing is working. In some countries, it will be really hard to engage, to convince engineers to stay and fix. So they'd probably say that, okay, we'll do it on Monday. If it's Ukrainians, very often they will volunteer themselves to stay and fix it just to make it happen. And the third one is, again, something that is pretty unique for Ukraine compared to Poland, compared to Romania, compared to even Russia. We never had a well-developed internal technology market and product market, which means that most of our and software development was outsourcing and Western oriented, which means that if you are successful, if you are a senior developer here, then it's very likely that you had a chance to work in international companies with different cultures. You understand what it means to work throughout various time zones. You understand what it means to be like productive, some cultural specifics of other people, and you basically understand how to work in large corporation, in multicultural, multi-language environment. And I think that's something that is very important as compared to Poland. So because they have very strong local tech markets, there might be cases that software developers, they don't use English on daily basis, for example, and there are companies that are like fully Polish, so it's better to talk in Polish. In fact, most of the technology companies that are in Ukraine, if they are mid-size or large, they became global. They've opened office in another country, so it's a real multicultural environment. If you are thinking about developers, and if you are getting those who understand how to work in multicultural environments, how to communicate effectively, how to do remote work effectively, that's something that ultimately drives the productivity of the team.
So quick key points, start young, I suppose. So the younger the people in school, we can teach them about IT, the more beneficial it is.
There is benefit that I forgot to mention. The most important is this engineering culture, mathematical background, and the desire to be like technology person and to grow as technologists. So we don't have like ambitions to become managers, and many people stay engineers throughout all their career, which is different from some other cultures, especially in Asia. The second one is our culture, which is very close to Western countries, hardworking, very direct communication. For example, if Ukrainian engineer will see that you are making the mistake in terms of the approach, in terms of the architecture, even if you are his boss, his or her boss, they will tell you about it proactively. They won't be like doing it and then just failing and say, okay, but you asked me to do it, so I did what you asked me to do. The third one is that we were like engineers here, they have a lot of experience working in international environment because most of the companies here, they are outsourcing oriented. And the fourth one is probably the government support. I forgot to mention about this, but now in software development, the companies who are opening offices here don't pay any tax at all unless they are moving money away from the country. And engineers here, they only pay 6% tax out of their income. So it's very effective taxation that is being supported by governments to develop the industry. And in fact, the Ukrainian tech industry now, I think it's the largest services export industry and one of the largest entire export industries. I think it's like second after agriculture at the moment.
That's an interesting point you raise, and this is something we'll cover in our future podcasts, is the concept of a conducive ecosystem. Digital transformation can succeed, but it succeeds even better if you've got a conducive ecosystem and looking at what are the external influences as well as the internal influences. And the culture of society makes a big impact.
That's indeed amazing topic. And I'm working on my PhD dissertation, which is somehow linked to the topic of getting this stable competitive advantage in dynamic environments for enterprises. So I think that ecosystem is now one of the critical success points to compete with others in that dynamic technology and external environments. And there is a lot of cases and examples that prove this. I think that's like now it's applicable not only for small or medium-sized companies, which is obvious, but also for large companies as well. If you are a large company, you have something that you produce, but then it can be multiplied depending on the partners you've chosen. So now it's less about procurement and more about building those strategic partnerships that empower your organization.
Tell us a little bit about 8Allocate, how you got to start it, what products and services you offer, and what's your vision for 8Allocate?
So as I mentioned, I spent most of my career working for large companies, in large services companies, for large international clients across many industries, which was a pretty nice experience. But I also started to realize that smaller company, and we are around 100 people at the moment, just to provide the context. It's mid-size, so it's not large company in the industry. I started to realize that like even for small company, there is a lot of possibilities and opportunities to provide the value to the clients that large companies cannot provide. And it is related to the ability of smaller company to be more innovative, to be more agile, faster adapt to the trends, to be flexible in terms of what the company could offer to the clients. And those are the principles I've set like as a ground of 8Allocate. So we want to be as great as large players, large services companies, but be more flexible, be more client-oriented, be more agile, and serve clients better in that way. So what does it mean in practice? It means that we are not focusing on certain technology, but we are focusing on the whole chain of delivering value to the client. For example, we have a very strong department which is for MVP development, for product discovery or solution discovery that can help client on the initial stage to refine the idea before it will even go into the implementation or estimation. Then we have really strong, I don't want to call it AI consultancy, but it's probably AI advisory. So we are focusing on helping clients to understand their processes, the inefficiencies in their processes, and identify the ways of where AI could be plugged into it to drive the real value. Because now there is a lot of hype around AI, but the statistics like 70% of digital transformations failed. I think that in the AI world now it's 90% of AI adoptions fail because they are happening due to technology, not due to realizing business value and benefit. So and because we are smaller, we can be flexible. So we are trying to focus on those areas that are the most demanding from overall market perspective. So now it's data and AI, of course. So most of our focus is on those areas because that's what clients need. So they want to understand their data, they want to turn it into their competitive advantage, then they want to get some additional efficiency with AI. So basically the idea of this series is about digital transformation. So I think that now like data is very significant part of digital transformation for every organization.
Yes, it's interesting maybe just to tell the listeners how we collaborate and how we got in touch. So obviously you deal with the technical aspects. My organization, Vidandi, we deal with more the front end, right? So we answer the question to CEOs or C-suite. Are we doing the right thing? Are we going to get the maximum return on investment? And as you say, in the world of AI, there's just so much that you can pursue, right? There's so many solutions out there for problems. As a CEO, the problem is going to be, okay, where do I focus? I could work on a CRM, I could work on data, I could work on internal ERP system, etc., etc. And how do they decide? And that's where we help them in assessing the stakeholder needs. We do lots of research and then come up with strategies that are needed and prioritize rather than just doing it for the sake of doing it. You obviously focus on then the next phase of the equation, which is then on how do you get the best user experience and the customer journey and all those kinds of things. So maybe if you want to just highlight a little bit about how you see transitioning from where we work to transitioning where you work, how it actually benefits you, right? So if you get somebody who comes in who knows exactly why they're doing it and what benefits they're going to get versus somebody who went to a conference and there's this AI tool and they said, implement this AI tool for me. I'm sure it causes you a lot of headaches because there's no clarity of purpose, no clarity of what they really want. They just want to jump on the bandwagon.
You're right. And this is, in my opinion, it closely relates to the idea of ecosystems, which you briefly touched earlier. I am a huge believer in specialization. So you can be expert in everything, but you can be expert only in few things at the same time. So that's why I really love to collaborate with you on this holistic value chain for the client, because you understand the business and how everything should be organized on a value perspective, and then we can turn it into a great technology solution. I started to build this AI efficiency offering again, and I think that company that experiments and had the culture of experimentation, trying something new, innovating, it's more like strategically stable than company that doesn't have those capabilities. But innovation for me, or experimentation for me, means that we are planning those experiments. So if you are trying the new technology, you still need to build some strategy around it, or at least form some expectations from those technologies. For example, we have like pretty well-defined and structured approach for implementation of AI in the organization, which contains 4 steps to implement the first use case and then scale it, and 5th step, which means scale the technology across the entire organization. But we always start, like every step, it starts from understanding the value, understanding the business potential, business outcomes, understanding return of investments, if it's possible to calculate it. So we first try to predict it. And then once we did some implementation, we are measuring it. And then we compare like whatever we achieved, what we wanted to achieve. And then we repeat the same in the agile way. And that helps us to be confident that what we are doing is actually not only us, but clients to be confident that what they are doing is bringing the real value into the organization. And I unfortunately see that it's not happening across the board and with all the companies, because many of them, as you correctly mentioned, they learn about new technology and then they just throw it to the teams to play with it. Or even worse, they might implement the large initiative to integrate this technology. And then at the end of it, they'll realize that it wasn't something that is suitable for their business.
Yeah, no, you're right. Even very large organizations, and I won't mention any names, but in the era of fintech, there's a lot of big banks that have tried to replicate the fintech success and tried to create not just products, but even ventures. So a whole new business idea. And they just could not compete with the fintechs for whatever reason. So I think this again is, let's forget about technology, even business models. People are like, let's jump on the bandwagon. Let's replicate a fintech solution. Let's develop it ourselves. And further down the line, that wasn't right for the business. And that's where we step in right up front, just to say, look, yes, you're going to get value out of your digital transformation, but are you doing the right thing is the big question that they should be asking themselves first.
Yeah, and I know about a lot of such cases. Again, without naming them, I can easily remember 2 or 3 situations as you described. So when big bank wanted to implement some fintech mechanic and then realized that just not working. So fintech, they are usually like more innovative, more flexible. So they don't develop technology in a big bank approach. Yes, they have, by the way, they have less resources. And I think that's another important limitation. So that's why they are more creative and they are focused on driving business value faster. And if you are a large organization, if you can throw a lot of money into it, just try to replicate, probably with wrong people, not from the perspective of people themselves. I'm sure the engineers there are great, but they are trained to work in stable, like regulatory environments, not in like turbulent technology startup environments. environment. So that's why they just can't innovate in the same way the smaller company innovates. And then as a result of it, if you don't have those quick feedback loops to understand that everything goes wrong, just allow it to run for a couple of years, and then you realize massive losses and you are stopping the initiative. Yeah, unfortunately, it happens a lot throughout the whole life cycle of the organization. And I think that what could be do as potentially better solution is either engage with the partners, someone who knows how to develop those fintech solutions and did it in the past, to help them, to allow them to help you to implement them. Or instead of replicating the technology, you can just buy the fintech company and make this technology yours. And then you are getting not only the technology, but the entire team who is behind this technology who can support the further development.
That's an interesting statement you made. So I work across the globe in a lot of developing markets as well as developed markets. And I was surprised that I was doing a presentation to CEOs of banks, right? So this was a Eastern European country as well. I won't mention names, but I was doing a presentation and we talked about digital transformation, fintech and all the rest of it. And I made the point, okay, you can buy up a fintech company. And interestingly enough, one of the bank CEOs said, look, we don't have as much money as fintechs have. So if you look at the amount of money, at least maybe is tapered off a little bit. But if you think of investors throwing money at fintech, there was a huge abundance of capital available for fintech companies. The same amount of capital is not available for banks. So yeah, banks make a lot of money, etc. Fine. Individual departments will have a limitation on their budget. And they said we can't compete. The idea of a bank being able to buy at fintech, yes, absolutely right a few years ago. Nowadays, I think there's some fintech companies that are buying up smaller banks to get a banking license.
In that case, doing the R&D internally, I would build it as a startup within the larger organization. So probably I would then hire people from those fintech companies to lead this innovation, and then I would give them as much freedom as I can, not connecting into the entire bureaucracy of the bank. Basically, build the kind of startup within this large enterprise and allow them to build first or second stable version to get the clients, and only that I will think about integrating them into the broader organization.
Even then, as I said, there's this banks I know that have launched exactly that, right? A new venture and a new branding, distancing themselves away from the main big mothership. And even then they failed because, as you say, the culture and the startup culture is very hard to replicate in a large organization, no matter how much you try. So I think, the sensible thing that's happening nowadays and enabled by digital, especially I look in emerging markets, is a partnership of some sort, right? So the problem that fintechs have is they need to go out and win the trust of customers. Then they need to acquire customers, which is pretty expensive and very time consuming. On the other hand, you've got banks who have major amounts of customers, but they don't have the agility and the innovation that fintechs have. So if they partnered up, bank could rely on the agility and the innovation and the tech stack of fintechs. And fintechs can rely on banks or microfinance companies on getting quick access to a huge amount of customers. And I think this is all well known, right? That partnerships seem to be the natural evolution in fintech. But obviously, we're talking about the impact of digital. And I also like to talk a little bit about and understand why 70% fail. So maybe if you can share with us case studies that you've experienced, right? The good case studies versus the bad ones. If a CEO or if a C-suite come to you and say, build a solution for us. I know you do a lot of sort of background work, but they still could be on the wrong path, right? And what has been the outcome? Have they closed the project? Wasted a lot of money? Have they evolved it into something else? Has it had an impact on their reputation, etc.? So it'll be good to understand practically from your client perspective. What is the bad case scenario, put it that way?
That's a good question. So I think that there was also an evolution of those bad cases. If you think about where industry was 20 years ago and compared to where industry is now. So earlier, the technology was mostly around back office, some choosing the right programming language, choosing the right architecture, whatever it's cloud, on-prem, etc., etc. So it wasn't like very much client exposing. So basically, digital transformation happens at the organization level and on the back office. And in this environment, the worst thing that you could have is just losing the money, right? So you can throw the money into some initiatives and then you can realize that there is no value out of it. Either you're not able to complete this project or you're not able to get the expected results, so you just stop this initiative and start it again. And I have the story from my previous life of being consultant in larger organizations. So I've seen migration of banks, clearing and settlements from mainframe that was fourth attempt to do it. So basically, previous three, they were like multi-million initiatives, but just stopped. And they've tried it like multiple times. So it's the multiplication of cost. But then it started to evolve as technology became more user-centric, right? So the next wave was related to user experience. So now, if you didn't think about UX or released the interface that is not user-friendly, not good enough, then it's not like just operational inefficiencies anymore, but you might start losing customers because of it, because they won't be happy with your product, with your platform, and then they will be choosing the competitor. And I think that this dangerous trend of deploying user-centric technology is even accelerating with AI, because now there is this emerging concept of AI agents that can replicate human workers and do it fully autonomously. So you don't really have the control over those agents. And if you are deploying them in incorrect environment, then they might create a lot of issues for your business. Let's take the example of chatbots that are now very popular. So you can't really control, or you should, what kind of advices they provide. So in that case, it might be that they just guide clients in the wrong way or generate inconsistent user experience and reduce client happiness, right? If you're taking customer support, for example. But there might be cases when they provide some information that they couldn't provide. Let's imagine a financial institution, and let's imagine chatbots that will be providing the guidance, and intentionally will be providing the guidance on what stocks to buy, how to trade on the market, etc. And then because it might not be allowed by this fintech company if they don't have like the broker license, may cause significant penalties and financial losses for the company.
No, absolutely. The regulatory aspects are really important. And that's why I come back to the concept of ecosystem. You have to factor everything, not just the technological solution. If you can share with us an experience, an actual case study of where things have gone wrong with one of your clients. Obviously, no mention of names or anything like that, but it'll just be good for the listeners to get a live case study of how things can go wrong if the front end is not factored in. So we're not starting on solving the right problem. We're starting on the technology-first approach, which is, in my view, is the wrong approach to go.
Yeah, so some companies, they just don't disclose like what caused them to get to this problem. But I have like few examples, like the one that I provided earlier about like first attempt to turn off the wireframe. For me, it was quite interesting because there were like millions of money basically used ineffectively.
Just track back on that example. What was the situation? What did you face when they came to you? Did they not customer experience, or did they not do that kind of journey mapping? Or
the problem was in the approach. I'm sure you understand it, but maybe it's important to provide a bit of context for listeners as well. So what is mainframe? So it's very old technology, and usually no one understands how it operates. Developers who created it, they are already retired. But it is highly effective, it works, but because there are like certain fee associated with every transaction, so most of the financial institutions, when the volumes were increased, they were very motivated to switch off them and move to another technology. And those three attempts, they failed for different reasons, but the common idea was that they've tried to attack it. So just throw a lot of money and do this waterfall style of work, a lot of planning, then requirements gathering, then architecting. And if you do this way, usually you end up with the situation when after first year or even after second year, you spend a lot of money on those initial activities. You present this to the board and you realize efficiencies are not there yet because nothing had been developed, right? And then companies are not patient enough to invest another like 3 to 5 years doing the same and guessing that maybe the efficiency will arrive at the end. What we did in this first attempt that was successful, we used Agile. So basically, instead of doing a lot of planning, I think we just understood like what business flows are the most important, and we started to migrate them from mainframe to the new system one by one. And as a result of it, after first year, we got like the significant portion of settlements, trades coming through the new system. So basically, there was some volume already that flew through the new system, and that was the justification that it works, there are efficiencies, and you can continue. So basically, it was the approach. It was like purely agile approach and a lot of innovative things. So for bank, it was really innovative. And that helped to complete it. There was some inefficiency related to GUI in that environment, but at least from like a core processing perspective, it was pretty successful initiative.
The GUI, if you can just describe that for our listeners.
Yeah, sorry, the user experience.
Right.
Graphical user interface.
Okay. I know we like getting into buzzwords.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's professional.
So if people come to you, they've already got a mandate, right? You have to develop a chatbot or whatever the case is, right? So they just move on, project management, blah, blah, blah. But if you're the CEO and you have choices, you'd be thinking at night when you're sleeping or you're in the shower, you'd be thinking, are we doing the right thing? Are we spending 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, 100 million on something? Are we doing the right thing? Whereas I think this person who's responsible for implementing, they ask, what do we need to do? The CEO will ask, why do we need to do it? And it's a different kind of a concept, right? And so I find that engaging with the business decision makers really then gets to think about, okay, are we doing the right thing? Let's take a step back. Let's understand the user needs, etc. Whereas those people who are implementing, they just say, look, I got a solution. I need to implement it. The board's told me to do it, or my senior managers told me to do it, right? We just tell me what to do and we need to get this rolled out.
Often it happens in a way you described, not only with enterprises, but with the smaller companies.
Yeah.
For example, now we have a lot of requests to help developing MVP of new AI products across multiple industries. And we have structured approach aimed to understand what we want to do through discovery. And then if we see on the discovery that the goal is not only to identify the right solution, but also to help client to elaborate his idea, and in some places even challenge the idea using our experience, using our intuition. So if we see that something is not likely to work, we'll tell client that, look, we are not sure about this or this bit. And when I do my conversations with the new clients, I often ask, even before I ask the questions about their process. And for example, if it's a startup company, how are you going to make the money, right? Just to better understand the idea. If I will identify that the solution itself shouldn't be developed in a way it is developed now, and as a result of it, I will save the person the money that he could otherwise spend on this solution, I think I've done the great job. And that's very different from many other companies who are thinking about the size of the engagement and how much revenue they will get out of this client. So for me, it's of course important, but it's not that important as driving the real value to the client. And as a result of this approach, we have clients who are working with us for 3, 4, 5 years because they enjoy the value we deliver to them throughout the whole process. And then we have clients who return to us like 3, 4 times when they just move to another companies. And if it's something that is like out of our expertise, then I call you to help to understand the business implications and help clients to build the right strategy, to build the right solution, to build the right use case.
This is a constant problem I face is when you tell people, let's take a step back and let's make sure you're doing the right thing. It's very difficult because the project is set into motion, right? Everyone's in the mindset of we need to deliver this. And then they continue delivering. They do a great job managing time, budget, projects, and projects delivered. At the end of the day, end result is not delivered. I'll give you an example. We talked about chatbot, right? So let's say that the CEO decides we're going to implement a chatbot, right? And they go buy a solution. Maybe if you take a step back, the better way to do it, and you take a stakeholder approach, the better way to do it is let's take a step back and decide, okay, what do we need for the chatbot to be efficient? So maybe the first stage of digital transformation would be let's collect data, because the chatbot needs to have data to operate efficiently. If you just take the step back instead of rushing into an AI transformation, you would have probably transformed your business internally to start collating data through technology, so that over 2 years, you build up enough data to then have a more reasonable chatbot, for example. So that's why I feel the ecosystem approach is so important. We have 3 layers of ecosystem players, right? So we don't only talk about customers. Everyone talk about customer or internal customer, right? Which is all fine. But there's 3 layers. So one is, who do we serve as an organization? We serve our shareholders and we serve our customers. Then the second layer is, who enables us to serve our customers? And that would be staff, that would be management, that there would be partners as well, potentially, and suppliers, right? And then we take a step back, is who influences how we serve our customers? And that will be the shareholders, the board, the governance at the board level. And also regulators play a huge role, right? And to some extent, competitors, because competitors will influence what you do, right? So for each problem, you have to identify who are the 3 stakeholders in the value chain, and then decide, okay, which one is the best one to work with. So in the chatbot example, instead of working at the customer level, let's start working at the enabler level and maybe at the influencer level. So we work on, okay, how do we collect the data? How do we get our staff trained up so that they can put the right data into the system, etc.? And also, what are the regulatory implications of it? So you work at the second and the third level first, and then further down the line, once you've got a better understanding, implement the AI chatbot. And that's the ecosystem concept that I've developed. But as I say, it's very hard to get people to agree to take a step back and relook at the direction they're going in. And if they did that, I think we'd have a lower chance of failure. And 70% of digital transformations fail, according to McKinsey and Harvard and various research. And this statistic has been around not last year or the year before. It's been around for a few years now, which is interesting. So what's the cause of the 70% from your perspective? Why are 70% of projects failing? I've given you my version. It'll be interesting to understand from your perspective. You developed the solution, yet the solution fails.
I think that the core reason is this weak preparation on the business case, applying it without not only the preparation, without understanding the purpose and the reason why you do it might be challenging. And I have another example similar to yours with chatbots. And they were like our client, but we didn't do any AI for them. We focused on another area. So I didn't even know that they developed this chatbot because they didn't tell it to us, because they decided to follow buy approach. So they just bought external solution. They launched it quickly. But then they realized that as a result of these chatbots, their customers are not happy. So the engagement dropped and the level of complaints increased. So they just rolled off this chatbot completely after a couple of months of its usage. So for me, it's the example where, just buying the solution. And that's my favorite one, actually, because every CIO has the challenge, whatever it needs to buy the external solution or implement something internally, buy versus build. So all the external platforms, they are very great on a level when they are being sold to you, right? Beautiful, solving all the issues quickly, effectively. But then there will be so much pain if you'll be going to core use cases that are supported by this platform. So if you are using it for those use cases that are supported out of the box, then it will be easy. And if you need to do something more complicated and customize this solution, then you'll realize that it is associated with much higher costs due to look into the specific technology, their architecture approach, their vision of how it should be developed, etc. So for me, build versus buy. If you are doing consideration of which platform to build, it's very important to provide a very detailed view into it, not just follow what the sales are telling to you, but try for your most difficult use cases, think how you want to use it strategically in a couple of years to understand if those use cases will be supported by the platform. And keep in mind that in most of the cases, customizing those platforms is like very, very expensive and very time consuming.
Yeah, it's interesting. Any solution, even if you're looking at the most smallest organization or at the individual level, is never going to fit your use case 100%. There's always going to be some element of customization, even Excel or Word or whatever. We all use it in different ways, right? and it doesn't fit our lifestyle 100%. So I still have to use another app, or I still have to do something outside of Word or Excel or whatever the case is. Build versus buy is interesting. In my world, if you've done the wrong path, you've done the wrong path, right? Whether you build or buy, buying might accelerate the failure quicker. Building might get you a little bit a more customized solution, and you may be able to pivot very quickly, but you're still going down the wrong path, right?
For me, again, like there's no solution that is silver bullet to any problem. So you still need to do your homework and first understand what business problem you want to achieve and how you are achieving it on conceptual level. And then you are jumping into technology. For me, like buy is a great solution if the platform supports 80%, maybe 70% of your use cases. But if the platform will be supporting only like 20% of your use cases, then it's very likely that your buy will turn on into build on a very unfavorable conditions, because you'll need to pay for the platform, and then you'll need to pay for customizing it, usually the premium rates to do it. But again, to be able to even identify whatever it supports 80 or 20% of your use cases, you should have those use cases. And that might be another reason why digital transformation fails, because company identify one or two use cases, the core use cases, and then they make all the decisions based on those core use cases. And then throughout the journey, they realize that they have another like 20 use cases that they didn't consider, and now they need to integrate them into the organization, like into this technology basically. So I think that there should be some agile on the way of how the things are being implemented, but there should be also a bit of waterfall on the way of how things are being planned.
It's interesting. In my world, obviously, I would say the main reason for digital transformation failure is, in the first case, people are doing the wrong thing, right? So I know a lot of people talk about culture and agile and about project management and about buy-in and governance, and there's lots of theory out there. But I guess if you're moving down the wrong path, then that's the biggest cause of failure. Of course, if you're moving down the right path, there are obviously some frictions that could have an impact of not the results of digital transformation. But I think in my world, obviously, I kind of urge the executives to sit back and look at this 360-degree view of the ecosystem, and then make sure you're focusing on the right problem, firstly, and then prioritizing that. So first, you work on quick wins. So try and get something where the impact of it on profitability, on customer, etc., is going to be high, but the amount of effort needed is going to be low. And those are ones that are quick wins, low-hanging fruits that you should go after first. But anyway, coming back to the podcast itself, when the podcast is called Impact with Digital, right? In my world, I work across sort of development and development agencies. And I can see in the world of finance and financial inclusion, I can see how technology can not only benefit organizations, but also benefit the wider society, environment, etc. So maybe from your perspective, in a good scenario, when people implement technology, what are the benefits they get out of it, business-wise? And what are the benefits they make to their environment, to their community, for example?
That's a really good and broad topic. I support your view about finance. Some use cases that I've seen from our clients, for example, one of the platform was to issue cards and financial products in effective way, so they are available for people who are not scored by banks high enough to provide
so credit cards or debit cards,
credit cards or debit cards for people who are not seen as trusted by banks to issue the card. So usually it's someone who is like either a low-paid job, a regular job, but they still need access to financial products. If you are thinking about another industries, or there is another example which is publicly available, which is associated with AI, not related to finance, but Microsoft. And that's for AI, you really need a lot of data centers and electricity to be consumed for the technology to advance and to support clients. So what Microsoft does, they use heat that's being produced out of their data centers to deliver it to houses that are in the close proximity, and like that way provide this infrastructure of heating those houses, which is an example of this concept of recyclable production, which is also very important personalization, I think that's another area which could contribute into like sustainable. For example, there are startup companies who can. The problem is that you are buying a lot of clothes, and usually people are doing this just to make one or two photos for Instagram, etc. But the technology could deliver like the digital for you, so you can use it for like your digital experience, and you don't even need to go to shop and buy it. So this item other serve shouldn't be produced at all to support this like very limited use case. And I think that
So what do you mean? Is it the digital clothes that you?
yeah, digital clothes. It
Right.
happens. It happens now, and AI can generate it. Or
While you're
digital
filming
or
yourself,
yeah.
then you have a different kind of clothes based on.
Correct. Yeah, and then you can get the picture out of it if you want to post it in Instagram, and brands can deliver clothes that way or furniture. So they don't need to produce it just to put in showrooms. So you come and decide which one you want to use, but there might be digital showrooms. So you log in, and I think that IKEA already provides it. I just double check, I'm not sure, but yeah, so you can just play with the room and decide which furniture you want to put. So you can upload the photo of your room or choose using generative AI, choose the concept that you want to build, and then you can just buy the actual furniture. So they don't need to overproduce something put in showrooms, and they don't need to support those showrooms at all, which is also associated with the additional electricity, etc. What else? Education is a great example. I think that AI, a lot of people, they are like worrying that AI will reduce the quality of education. But in my opinion, it can increase it, because now teachers are overloaded, so that they don't provide enough personalization for like enough attention to every particular person, student, which AI could help to improve.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer, and I've seen this in emerging markets as I work in the fintech space, and I've definitely seen evidence of how fintech can drive financial inclusion. And now green finance, for example, using technology can again lead to more the environmental solutions, because people are getting the right amount of funding for these kind of solutions.
I have another small example I just remembered from my like day-to-day life. So in Google Maps, if you are using it as GPS navigator, it now supports you in a way to show you like which route would be the most effective from the fuel consumption perspective. Right. So it can guide you in the best way to minimize the fuel usage from point A to point B. And that's not only about cost saving, but it's about less fuel usage produces less pollutions, which is also important.
No, absolutely. Moving on, what's the future? We're now seeing a massive trend in AI, and every country wants to be the best country for AI, and I'm sure AI is here to stay. What's the next big wave in technology, in digital?
I think that AI is on a peak of hype at the moment, so there will be some decline in the coming years when companies will realize that not one size fits all solution, and then it will go on a plateau. I'm pretty impressed with what happening in quantum computing area, for example. It's still like on the prototyping phase, but I think that in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe more, it will have the potential to disrupt the whole computation, touch any aspect of technology.
So what would be the benefit of that? So quantum computing. So assuming quantum computing is now widely available, what's the benefit of that?
It will allow to adopt digital technologies in even more like effective way and on a higher scale. The potential for them is to be more effective than traditional conductor chips or computers. I think that technologies will play a more significant role in ESG in particular in the next couple of years. I think that like AI itself, despite that there will be some decline, it will make a significant impact in optimizing, in helping people to implement their routine, use their routine and focus on more creative work. So basically acting as copilots or as assistants that automates your routine and allows you to focus on things that are more complicated, more interesting, more challenging, or more meaningful for you. I think that's where technology will also play a key role in the next couple of years. What else could I see in terms of trends? I think there will be more of robotics and broader use cases of robotics. Autonomous driving is one example. Another one, there will be some robots, very likely paired with AI, that will be automating some routine physical activities. So not only digital activities, which is happening already, but also some physical activities like
Cleaning your
sleeping,
house.
cooking, cleaning house, cooking. So not those robots that are available now, but some that are more sophisticated. And I've seen some of them being produced already in countries like Japan.
In China, I know China is doing
China.
quite a lot. Yeah. So you don't have to clean your house anymore. You don't have to think anymore. Interesting evolution for humanity.
Yeah, but if you think about it, you don't like to clean your house anyway.
Yeah, but at least you get a bit of exercise, right?
So
if you look at gaming, for example, and young people don't go outside. They're putting on more weight. They eat more unhealthy. Sometimes technology has to be balanced, right? So if you've got AI robots now doing all your work, means you don't get any exercise. You can play games all day. And again, if you're not thinking because AI chatbots are doing all the work, then your brain development might suffer. I suppose it's a balanced approach, right?
But chatbots can also play the role of coaches to give you access to the knowledge that's not available now.
No, obviously, yeah. No, I think there's definite benefits, and obviously, that's what the podcast is all about. But I think we just got to caution that it's got to be a balance. And I think AI, if you see AI and technology as an instrument for helping you do things more effectively, that's a better outcome than, for example, AI doing my work. So if you're producing an article, doing your homework, if you're a school child, developing solutions, instead of taking what AI gives you, it's a starting point, right? It's like a calculator, right? Calculator is used to calculate a certain part of the equation, not to give you the full answer.
Correct. And it's designed to automate the things that you don't want to do anyway. So of course you can do the same like using traditional way, which will take much more time for you than using calculator. Problem in our society, from my perspective, is that people are like pretty busy all the time, and they might not be busy like with meaningful things. So if AI will automate some routine, so you'll be focusing less on the tasks that could be automated and more on, I don't know, spending the time with your family or doing some meaningful job for you. I think that will make people happier and that will make people's lives more meaningful at all.
Yeah, it raises a very good point because creativity, I guess, has been lost over the years because how busy people are and it's a crazy life. So going back to the creative ideas, the next, I guess, jobs coming out with a new idea. Machines can't do that because machines rely on historical data. So I guess if you're freed up to think a little bit outside the box and meditate and etc., you'll come up with better solutions for society in future.
That's a very good point. And I had similar conversation just yesterday on the topic of whatever could replace workers or humans at all. And I think you are right. So being human means that you can analyze, but then you can also synthesize, right? Create something new. And machines, AI, they're mostly focused on analyzing. And so even those that are like generative AI, so they operate on a level of mathematical statistics, right? So they've trained on a lot of data and then they just produce the most probable outcome to your request based on all this data that is available. But they are not thinking, they are not creative, and they don't have those like capabilities yet. And I think that's the reason why technology will not replace human. And of course, the idea of this technology is to replicate human brain. And it's now like we are moving to science fiction area already. But even if you think about other animals, among all of them, it's only human who is able to create, who is able like to have those advanced cognitive capabilities. So if you train AI to the level of brain, right? But it's likely that it's not only like brain that makes human. So maybe it's also something related to genetics. I don't know. Otherwise, there would be like more animals like human who are able to, like Homo sapiens, who are able to reason, who are able to create things, who are able to build the nature around them, not just live within the nature. You understand?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a good philosophical discussion about consciousness, and what makes us human is this consciousness behind us. It's something that drives us, right? And that compels us to produce things and make the world a better place, hopefully. In closing, what's your message for a CEO or a C-suite around digital transformation. What's your key takeaway? What's your one message that you want to leave them with?
I think that based on what I see and based on what I understand, I think that every business and every company, they need to think about digital transformation. Of course, there is the question of how to do it correctly. And that's where like you can help, other companies can help, we can help. It is necessary and there is no choice for every business and for every company to adopt it. And I'm not talking about AI only, I'm talking about broader technologies. And I think that now we are reaching the point where those technologies are not only efficiency gainers as it was in the past, but also they could differentiate your business and they could create new revenue streams. So basically they could give you the competitive advantage, which we see like often, and it happens more and more, like Uber that disrupted the whole taxi industry. And there are like tons of examples similar to it.
So basically you got no choice. And if you don't do anything, you'll be disrupted.
Very likely, yeah. You'll be eaten by your successors and incumbents, or maybe even smaller companies, but more innovative, and they'll just take over your customers.
Andrey, thank you. How can listeners get a hold of you? How can they get in touch with you?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. I often publish a lot of content on AI there and have newsletter because that's my key area of interest, personal interest at the moment. So it's possible to connect with me on LinkedIn or email me directly. I'm always happy to talk and discuss or brainstorm ideas or help some projects if there is a need.
We'll put a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes.
Thank you.
But thank you very much for being our first guest, and hopefully in coming back again at some point, we can discuss things as your journey into AI progresses. But thank you for your time. It's been a fascinating discussion, and we look forward to chatting to you again.
Thank you, Jay. It was indeed great discussion. Thanks for your time, and looking forward to talk more on it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.